Hi. Um, Tonight's video is about my second admittance to a mental health unit. Um, so this one was a little bit different because I was having such a hard time. It was in January of 24. Um, One thing I forgot, a couple of things I forgot to mention last night was I am still in contact with one of my friends from my first day in the mental health unit where I had two breakthrough seizures. And the other thing I forgot to say was I do appreciate everybody that came to my house that night because they were there to make sure I was okay. And I appreciate that. So for my second stay, it was in January of 2024. And this is a little bit similar to partially how I got to the point of needing to go in September of 21, which was September of 21 was approaching the anniversary of my church friend who died by suicide a couple of years before that. January 24 was approaching the anniversary of the death of a NAMI support group member, fellow member, and friend who died by suicide. So this was rough because it was this only 1 year since the death versus a couple of years or a few years after the other one. And again, I was in a place where I had no job, no income, and I just didn't know any other way to keep going. And I knew I needed help. But I did something that I could have done differently. I messaged a Facebook friend that I knew she was a drug salesperson, but I didn't know that she used to be a mandated reporter in her state. So she noticed things that were going on and that I was saying. So she called 911 and cops came to my house. This time it was just cops. And they talked to me for a little bit and we decided I'd go to the hospital again. And this time they handcuffed me because it's protocol. Even though this was for mental health, everybody that they transport, who's else they go to, I guess, that they transport to the hospital, has to be handcuffed, which I don't understand. And the handcuffs were really, really tight on my wrist. But they took them off as soon as I got there to the ER. And I walked in. The cops and myself answered questions. We did the vitals. I was taken again to the mental health unit holding area. I called my dad, and halfway through the call, somehow it turned off or ended the call. So I tried again, and I got through to him again, and I told him what was going on. This time I didn't have to wait as long to get into a mental health unit. And this time it was in what they call this unit to the one I was in 2021. I appreciated this psychiatrist because he said if he took my insurance, he would have stayed seeing me, but he didn't take my insurance, so that was unfortunate. Again, I made friends. This time I knew more about the routine because it was the same hospital. It was just a different unit. And we had to line up both times. We had to line up for vitals, line up to get our meals, line up to get meds. It was just crazy. But since I was already on antidepressants this time, it was a little bit easier to transition than it was in 21. And again, I had a roommate. This time I was allowed to keep my shoes because there were new shoelaces, which was nice. So I could put on the shoes on top of my feet. And I had a certain color sock for fall risk because of my epilepsy. And that I understood that, but at the same time, I didn't because I haven't fallen because of a seizure since I was a teenager. So I didn't quite understand why I was a fall risk, but so this visit, I knew it was going to be roughly 7 days from my previous time in the hospital. And it was. They were going to discharge me in the morning, but the night before I was discharged, I called my dad and said, can I wait until after lunch so I can try the fried plantains that I had ordered as part of my lunch? And he said yes, so I got picked up after lunch. My second time, and the staff on this unit was a lot nicer and more professional than on my first time in the unit. And I was ready, but I wasn't quite as ready as I would like to have been before I was discharged this second time. But they did help me find a place that had a therapist that took my insurance, and I started using them. And it was just my insurance's therapist. And I didn't like that because I kept getting different ones because they kept leaving and going to other practices, which I'm assuming was because the insurance wasn't paying them well enough. for working for the insurance company. So I had stopped seeing those therapists after a while because I was getting annoyed that I had to keep telling my story to the therapist from the insurance. So that was annoying, but at least I found they helped me find one that took my insurance the second time, and post discharge the second time, they also contacted me for the first 30 days post discharge, which was different than my first time where I had to just be on my own and not know what to do. And I appreciated that part of it. I, like I said, really wanted to stay with that psychiatrist, but he didn't take my insurance. So I couldn't stay with him. So I had to find a new psychiatrist as well. And that's how I found my current psychiatric nurse practitioner, was just by searching my insurance website. And she is really nice and helpful. I would talk more about this tomorrow when I talk about my most recent stay in a mental health unit. That's all for now, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.